everybody. Welcome. It seems like you're trying to go into the ditch. I see, ladies and gentlemen, already. We haven't even started. Well, welcome. So, how's everybody doing tonight? Hello, Tracy. How are you?
Doing good,
Doing
Grizz. How
good.
you doing,
Hello.
buddy?
Wonderful. Hello, Gary and
So
Crystal,
everyone knows. Hello,
Rebecca,
everybody. I'm
Standing
working on a
Stone.
new computer tonight, Grizzly. Hopefully, the voice and everything comes up good. So, my apologies to any. This is the third one. If it ain't this, it's got to be my connection somewhere in the Wi-Fi or whatever. I live down at the bottom of a hill, so I have some issues there. So,
All
how you been,
right.
man?
Hello, Richard. Doing good. Hello, Catherine. Roger Blair. Welcome, everybody, to another edition. Hopefully, everybody's doing good. Nice to see you, Tracy. So, welcome, everybody. So, what we got
You
going on
too.
tonight, kind sir?
What have you been up to, Chris?
I'll just staying busy like always.
Well, we have Miss Rachel Hayward on tonight. She is on from a very late time over in England right now. It's almost midnight there, or actually, I guess it would be midnight there now. So
12:04. Yes.
she's a yep, she's a great person and somebody that we should get on her and get her talking about us, so we ain't got to keep her up too late.
Welcome, Rachel. How you doing there?
Well, I should say good morning, actually. So good morning to you. Yeah, we're doing okay over here. Thank you.
Well, good. Nice to have you. So tell us all about yourself.
Oh gosh, that's the one. I'm a paranormal investigator and an author. That's in a nutshell. That's me. I've been investigating the paranormal for about 40 years. And approximately 5 years ago, I released my autobiography, A Lock House Haunting, because I grew up on the River Thames in a haunted lock house.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So tell us about that.
So haunted lock house. Can you explain?
Yeah, the River Thames has approximately 45 locks on it. Each lock has a lockkeeper's cottage, which is there mainly to ensure the safe passage of the boats on the river. The one that I lived in, my father was a lockkeeper in Berkshire overall he was there for over 30 years, but at this lock it was I was there for about 21 years. The house was built in 1731 and we experienced activity ever since I was younger than I could remember, to be honest, up until the point I left.
Wow, that's interesting. That's old.
It was old, yes.
Give me a minute, Chris. I'm gonna have to sign on from my phone.
Yeah. So what kind of experiences did you have living in something like that?
Well, the house, the actual lock was situated between two islands. So we lived on an island. We were the only house on there. The experiences ranged from footsteps to seeing apparitions, items being moved, bedclothes being tossed onto the floor. Oh gosh, drawers opening and closing by themselves.
Wow.
Voices. One point I was pushed down the stairs and had I suppose the best way to describe it would be a disembodied arm with the hand landing very firmly on my shoulder. Probably about the fastest I've ever run in my life, if truth be told.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine that. No, not at all.
No.
How long did you endure this? For how many years?
My first experience that I remember was just around about 6 years old, and I left the house when I was 21.
Wow.
So
Tracy,
yeah,
she's got a lot of activity during that period.
That is awesome to hear. Depending on which way
yes,
you're looking at it, right?
yes. It's one of those things where I wish I could go back now as an adult and actually investigate it properly. But as a child, it was terrifying.
So, and I forgive me, I had to sign out and come back in. So that was at the Lock House, right?
That was, yes.
And that was in Berkshire.
Yeah, near Windsor.
On the River Thames. Okay, that is awesome. And I say this too many times, but my wife and I went to London last year, so that was pretty cool to be able to see all that stuff down there. A lot of good history there.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: so if you don't, so Lockkeeper, I'm assuming a dam, right? For a river or
for a river, yes, on the Thames, the same river that runs through London.
Yeah.
And the locks are basically there to ensure safe passage of the boats, and they have weirs which maintain or try to maintain the level of the water so that it's kept safe. At the moment, we've got too much water, and there's a lot of flooding.
And you published a book on it called The Lock House Haunting in 2000.
I did indeed, yes.
Where while we're talking about that, where can people get that?
They can get that on Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
In fact, hold on 2 seconds. Oh, that wasn't planned at all, but I was showing somebody else. If I can, there we go.
Oh, wow.
There you go. That's my little bit. Apparently, I don't advertise myself enough, so there we go.
No, absolutely.
My wife's looking it up right now.
Excellent. I hope you enjoy it.
So, you talked about your young years and living there. You lived there till you were 24.
Yeah.
I'm kind of reading through your bio, scanning through it. So you're talking back in your teenage years, you travel alone to different locations, trying to find other, apparitions and stuff. So where exactly did you go when you were that age to find these other spots?
My first, if you can loosely call it an investigation, was at Hampton Court Palace. And I sat there in the long gallery for about 2 hours, just waiting to see something. I was about 16 at the time. The only thing I saw were lots of tourists and the security guards who were quite perplexed by what I was doing. But then after that, I did a bit of traveling in my teenage years. So I did some investigating in Israel and a little bit in Australia, in Western Australia. And then a few years back, we were on holiday in Tunisia. So I did a little bit there as well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you've been a lot of places. If you don't mind me asking, how were you able to travel like that? Were your parents in the military or something like that? Or?
No. I lived in Israel for just under a year. I was out on a kibbutz and then saved up my money and just traveled around. And the other places were on holiday. And I've got family in Australia, so we were out there to see them.
Wow. Rebecca's asking, Rachel, during your time at the Lock House, what was your first haunting experience? And was you 6 years old when that happened, you think?
Yes. My brother had died. I was about 6. And it was the following year because my dad had redecorated and I'd moved into my brother's old room, primarily because it was the next size up from the room that I was in. My room originally was just like a box room. And I used to be visited by the best way to describe him would be, I mean, bearing in mind I was about 6, was a boy who looked maybe 13, 14. He wore quite a smart suit, collarless. I remember that distinctly. And he used to try and get me to do things that weren't very good, like throw things out of the window, which got me into trouble with my mum and dad because I did. And he wasn't very pleasant.
Wow.
And that took to the point where my parents actually took me to the doctors because they thought I might need some kind of help, shall we say.
Right. She's also asking, Rachel, do you have any adult help when you learn how to deal with the paranormal living there?
No, not when I was growing up. It was very much a case of there's no such things as ghosts. That wonderful line that seemed to be spouted quite a lot in those days. There wasn't the acceptance or even close to the understanding that there is now. So it made for quite a lonely childhood in many respects.
No, I can imagine.
What happened with the 13 or 14-year-old boy? Did he just eventually go away or what?
Yes, basically, from memory, I yelled at him and he didn't come back. It was quite bizarre because one of the things I always remember is he always used my name, but I never knew his name. And that was something that weirdly stuck with me.
As time went by there, did I know you saw more than that. What other apparitions or people did you see in there?
I had one incident which actually has proved quite fascinating because of recent events. One evening, my father was a stickler for when you're young, being in bed early and all that sort of thing. So this was a July early evening, maybe 7, 8 o'clock at night. I was reading, and it's very difficult to describe, but basically there was a spirit, an apparition came through who looked like a Tudor merchant, dressed in very sort of Tudor styled clothing, who, when he came in and we kind of looked at each other, I was lying in bed, he looked at me, I looked at him, and I don't know who was more surprised to see each other. And he looked at me, as I said, in complete surprise, and then kind of like not so much faded, but went backwards through time. Sort of, it was it was almost like dropping a pebble. You know how you drop a pebble into water and it gets smaller and smaller, but you can still see it. It was kind of like that effect. And that was quite surprising. And what was interesting about that is just upriver from us in the village is Holy Trinity Church, which is actually where I was christened. And in the past couple of years, they've been doing a major archaeological dig behind the church, where they have discovered a lost monastery. And it transpires that Cookham, back in sort of medieval to Tudor period, was one of the most important ports alongside London, and there was a lot of merchant trading between the boats and the monastery. Whereas I always found it quite strange that I would see a Tudor merchant there, it kind of now makes sense why I would have done.
Interesting. You know, it's weird, you know, because we hear this a lot, right? Where people see apparitions and it's like they go along their business and they look at you and you look at them and they're like, you can see me? And they're in shock. I wonder why that is.
It was, I mean, as I said it in my book, it was as if he just did not expect to almost like he'd gone through the wrong door. Sort of obviously not a solid door, but he was just absolutely astonished to see me. There was no malice, there was no nothing. He just looked genuinely surprised to see me, and I was quite surprised to see him as well, to be honest. But it wasn't a scary incident at all.
Interesting.
So I'm looking. So around 2007, you moved to the Forest of Dean, or you had your second child in that area in Gloucestershire. Am I saying that right?
Gloucestershire, yeah.
Gotcha.
It's our weird language. Don't worry about it. Our spelling is horrendous in this country.
Yeah. So it says, you had said that that's when you started to really seriously pursue the paranormal, and you set up a group called Researchers of Paranormal Events, ROPE, Rope. Can you talk
That's
about them,
correct.
please?
Yep. Yeah, we're a small team. There's technically 6 of us, although most of the time there is only 3 of us investigating, primarily because of family commitment. So it's not always easy for people to get out. So we've been going since 2011, 2012, maybe. Go all over the country. We've been, in fact, we are in Cornwall this weekend, investigating I don't know whether you'd call it famous or infamous Jamaica Inn in Cornwall. We've been up north to Chillingham Castle, which is just south of Scotland. We do private residential investigations, and we have been known to hold public events as well.
What is during that time, what's been the one place you went that really surprised you, that you got tons of evidence at?
Oh, that's a difficult one to say because every location is different. One of the a place in Cornwall we went to, which was a youth hostel. It used to be it was built on the train line. It's a Victorian station that was used mainly for storage. We didn't expect any activity there at all. And I can actually remember when we got out of the car when we first arrived, my words were, well, this looks haunted. Not. The first night we were there, we had a dragging noise, which nobody could explain. There was nobody there. The second night, I still find it hard to put into words. We had constant tapping, which was coming from wherever you wanted it to come from. We were pointing and saying, right, could you tap on this wall? And it would. We said, can you tap on this door? And it did. We knew that there was nobody else behind the door because it was our room, and our room was empty because we were all in the hallway. That then escalated to something that I never believed in, which was table tipping. And we had a solid oak coffee table sliding around the room as if it was on glass or water. And to push it by ourselves was incredibly difficult because it kept digging into the carpet. But this table was just, it was unbelievable. We talked about it for months afterwards, just could not believe what we were seeing. And it was the lightest of touches. I mean, when it first started to move, myself and Kim, one of our investigators, we just looked at each other and we examined this table so intricately, and we were looking desperately to find someone that was responsible, and there was just nobody was pushing this table. We had our hands on it and that was it, and it was going round the room like a rocket at times. Absolutely incredible. Wow. Then one of the, I don't get scared on investigations. saying that we have a Victorian prison in Gloucester, which is now, I can't think of the phrase, but it's no longer in use. So it's used a lot for ghost hunts and things like that. And one of the first times we went there, the activity was mind-blowing. We had tapping in what they classed as the chapel, which was quite interesting, you know. And then we moved to an area where the prisoners would have been examined, basically, to check for drugs and things like that. And there was 6 of us in the room, and we could distinctly hear a male heavy breathing, and we were 6 women. There was no men in there with us, and we could smell like fetid breath. It was really very, very unpleasant. And the other girls said, look, we just don't feel comfortable with this. So I said, right, okay, we'll leave. And I made the mistake of saying, well, we're going to go now, but you're boring me. I don't find you very interesting. You may have frightened the others, but you've not bothered me. We then moved up into one of the cell blocks, and as we came out onto the cell landing, we could hear tapping. Now, we were the only people in the cell block, and there'd be, Catherine says I'd be gone.
Yeah.
And we had tapping on the handrail. So we all stood there, made sure it wasn't any of us, made sure it wasn't any atmospheric conditions. And this tapping continued, and it was like it wanted us to follow it. So we followed it, and then the tapping stopped outside a cell. So Kim, who was with us, she went in and she said, oh my God, you've got to come in here. It stinks. It stinks of BO and stale tobacco. It's horrible. So I was like, yeah, all right. She said, no, you've got to come in. I walked in and walked straight back out again. And she said to me, she said, oh, could you smell it? I said, no, I couldn't smell a thing. And she said, well, why did you leave? And I said, well, between you and me, this face appeared of this oldish man with lanky grey hair, big sideburns, just leering at me between her and me. And it kind of really shook me up, which was unusual. And we sort of standing outside on the cell. And I said to the, I just said sort of out loud, was that the spirit that I told was boring? And it just banged really loudly. And I was like, okay, you got me on that one. I'll let you have that. But that was quite scary. And Gloucester prison has got quite a reputation now for being quite haunted.
I am not going ghost hunting with you.
Yeah, I hear you.
A lot of people say that. This is it. I tend not to get scared while people are running away. I'm running forward and trying to investigate more. That's what we're there for. So
Yeah. Why do you think that you have? It seems like you have a good connection with all these entities. Why do you think that is like that with you?
You know, I've been asked this a lot, and the only thing I can put it down to is I've got quite a forthright personality, and my character is challenging. So I'm not afraid, and I think they kind of find me as a bit of a challenge. I mean, don't get me wrong, I can go months without anything happening at all. You know, it's one of those things, and you can go, I mean, the times I've wondered why I do this, because it costs a lot of money. You don't make any money. You do it for love. You're in all weathers. I mean, next week it's probably going to be snowing in Cornwall, so it'll be blooming freezing. Yep. And you wonder why on earth you're doing it. And you think, do you know what? I'd much rather be sitting at home with my husband watching a good film. And then you get something. And all of a sudden you realize why you're doing it. You're doing it for that bit of activity that is helping you to discover whatever it is you're discovering.
Do you ever utilize any mediums or psychics when you go to your investigations?
I don't personally, but I have friends and colleagues who are psychics and mediums, sensitives, and it's always interesting, I find, to see what they pick up on, and then if we can corroborate any of that. It's a good research tool to see if, you know, if there is any evidence of, you know, you can back up what they're saying, basically.
So, yeah, I'm reading here as well. You've had two of your experiences in Dr. Cal Cooper's book, Telephone Calls from the Dead. And one another experience in John Fraser's book, Poltergeist. Can you explain what those experiences are?
I can. Strangely enough, I'm actually doing a talk tomorrow with a group on the Poltergeist one. It's usually I try and stay detached, and I believe that when you're investigating, you shouldn't let your opinions, your thoughts, your beliefs affect what you're investigating, because you've got to look at what's happening and not what you think is happening. The Poltergeist one, we were at Herefordshire Shire Hall, which originally, well, it now stands on what was a jail. And the jail used to have a flat roof, and that's where they hanged people, by chucking them off the roof, basically. I think it was about 2016, we were there. And we'd arrived, and we'd been told that the duty sergeant had gone home with the cell keys. So if we went in the cells and the cell door shuts, we'd be there till the Monday morning. So we thought, right, we won't be going in the cells. Now, Herefordshire, it's quite unique because as a Shire Hall, it has two active Crown Courts. Couldn't think then, it's late. Excuse me. It has two active Crown Courts that are in use, and it has 4 cells underneath. So it's quite unique for a Shire Hall to still have this. Anyway, we were unpacking, and we were at the sergeant's desk, and we heard tapping. We hadn't asked for anything. We were literally taking out bits and pieces from the bag. And in a nutshell, we had a 5-minute conversation with the tapping of someone who said that they were female, that they were hanged for a crime that they didn't commit. They said that they were hanged for killing someone, but not for murder. It was quite an interesting conversation, with the tapping answering yes and silence as no. Anyway, I'd managed to ask the questions where I thought I might be able to glean enough information to see if I could trace this person. I wasn't overly confident, but I went back, and we have a wonderful website in this country called capitalpunishment.org, and it's basic. When I first found it, it was quite rudimentary, but it's grown, and it basically tells of every prisoner that was convicted, what they were convicted for, and what their punishment was, which when you're doing research is really useful. Anyway, it transpired that only 20 people had been hanged at Herefordshire jail. And out of those 20 people, only 2 were women. One woman had been hanged for theft. I think it was theft of a horse, but I'd have to check. But the other one was hanged for murder. And her name was Sarah Pugh. It took a bit more research because it was, as I say, quite rudimentary. But I managed to look into this. I hired a freelance researcher who sent me a plethora of information from newspapers from the 1800s, which actually told about this woman's crime. Basically, she was staying in a halfway house with her 12-year-old daughter. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, the people in the room, there was about 12 people in the room, woke to find this lady, Sarah Pugh, trying to cut her own throat. The noise, and this is where I find it really bizarre, but this is how it's reported. The noise woke her 12-year-old daughter, who upon waking discovered that her throat had been slit. The story varies slightly about where she actually died, whether she died in the room or outside. One of the stories is that she ran naked from the house trying to get to her sister who was working in a street sort of a couple of streets away. But either way, she died, and Sarah Pugh was hanged for her murder. It's a really rare case because back then in infanticide, the killing of your children, was really common. It was killing your babies because they just couldn't afford to look after or feed their children, so most killing of children was children under the age of 6 months old. So the research I found was that basically this lady had 2 children. It seemed that there was a husband, but the husband had possibly died, and she could no longer afford to look after herself. And in those days, you had 2 choices. If you were sort of, poor, your choices were prostitution or the poorhouse. And what mother wants to put her child into prostitution or a poorhouse? And so that I found really fascinating, and I've become really involved in sort of looking for this information, which was, I found really fascinating, that the tapping that we received, which I had scientifically evaluated, I could then, by asking the right questions, have been able to correlate into history what actually happened. I can't say it was definitely Sarah Pugh, but all of the boxes seemed to be ticked. So that I found really fascinating. Now, the one in Dr. Cal Cooper's book was completely different, and extraordinarily bizarre and very difficult to explain. Basically, in 1999, my dad died, had a heart attack. A few weeks later, myself, my husband, who at the time was still my fiance, and my daughter, who was 8 at the time, we went on holiday into Devon. We went camping. So we're in a campsite, and it was either the night before or the night after the massive eclipse that we had back then. And basically this telephone starts ringing, and to me it became the sound resembled the phone that we used to have at the lock. And while this is all happening, I'm arguing with myself out loud. It's 10 o'clock at night. I'm arguing with myself that I shouldn't be hearing this noise. This is ridiculous. My brain is obviously doing something really bizarre, and can my brain please shut up? And this sound of this ringing phone still continues, and eventually I answer it. I'm not really sure how I answered it, but I answered it, and it's my dad. And I had a 5-minute conversation with my father, who had basically, as he said, contacted me to ensure that I look after my mother.
Wow.
At the end of this phone call, I go out of the tent. I burst into tears, and I'm sick because it just really shocked me. I didn't even believe it when I'm talking. I'm going, yeah, you're not my dad. You're just my brain. And it was indescribably bizarre. And I didn't even know these sorts of things could happen back then until I did some research. And then Cal was doing some research and I was put in contact with him. Hence why it's in the book. But that, yeah, it was a really bizarre and a very, very emotional experience.
Well, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I always hear the story. I don't know if you ever heard it, Chris, here in the States. The gal that, or this woman that was dating somebody for a long time, and they break up, and a lot of time goes by, and she gets a call in the middle of the night from him, and he's apologizing to her for what had happened between them. And it's like a year or two after they broke up, and they talked for like a half an hour on the phone, and then the next morning she calls his house, and his mom answers, and the mom's like, no, he's been passed for over a year now. He passed away. But it was like, what do they call it? Reconciliation, or trying to get closure.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm astounded when you look at the research, particularly that Dr. Cooper does, just how many people have experienced this, or variations of this. I find it fascinating.
That is fascinating.
It's from calls on even on mobile phones, and people getting texts now. On their phones from people that have passed days, weeks, even months beforehand. It's not an area I'm knowledgeable on, but it's an area that fascinates me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know Grizzly has talked before about on his deck at his I believe his mom's house, and his your grandpa out there
down at the lake smoking.
Yeah.
After he passed. So yes, it does happen. It's very fascinating, right? It's something that we cannot understand nor explain to somebody it's never encountered something like this, because they can't comprehend it.
No, I mean, I struggled to comprehend it, and it happened to me. So for somebody that hasn't experienced it, it's weird. I mean, you hear stories as well of people where phones ring where the phones aren't even connected anymore. They're just a decorative piece that sat there, and they've rung. And yes, some amazing experiences that people have had. And
Uh-oh, did we lose you, Rachel?
I'm back again.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good. But no, you're right. And, when people explain their stories to other people, usually it's years after the fact, because a lot of people just don't talk about it. So, absolutely.
No, exactly. I mean, I didn't speak about this. I mean, say this happened in 1999, and I didn't speak about this till Cal's, about a year before Cal's book came out, because I just didn't know anything about it. I didn't think anyone would believe me, to be honest. The fact that I was arguing with myself, saying, no, this is wrong. And I was really riling with myself. I must have looked like a demented woman. I really must have done, because I could hear this phone, and I knew nobody else could hear it because I was in a tent, and I was getting cross because who puts an extension bell for a phone out in a campsite? I was like, how dare these people? And then realized that actually nobody else was being disturbed but me. And really bizarre experience.
Yeah, it sounds like it. That's amazing. That's actually an amazing experience. I mean, Grizz, could you imagine somebody that you hadn't talked to in years, that you never thought you'd talk to again, give you a call?
Well, my ex-mother-in-law, when her husband passed, now cable in America depends on your provider. When your telephone rings, your home phone, it will display who's calling on your TV screen. And her dead husband's cell phone number came up and said his name a year after he passed. And she answered it, and nobody was on the line. Explain that with his name on it. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of experiences like that before. There's just no way to explain it. It's, you know, someone will tell you, oh, it's a glitch with the telephone company or the cable company, but that's a hell of a glitch for it to ring that person's house and for them
Agreed.
to know who it is. Especially when you have somewhere the size of the States, you know, we're small fry
Right.
compared to you guys population wise. So the chances of that happening and being the right person over there is enormous.
Right.
So you go on to talk about your experiment with Zener cards and a Ouija board. Can you first of all explain what Zener cards are? Are those the Zen cards that we talk about?
They're the cards with the best. Well, if you're like me and you're a fan of Ghostbusters,
Yeah.
in the very first Ghostbuster, he's holding up cards and he's trying to electrocute the bloke and making the woman pretend that she's getting all the cards right with the stars on and the wavy lines.
Yep.
They're Zener cards. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're the Zener cards. So basically the experiment we've been running is, which we've been running for about 5 years. We find it works better in places that are, should we say, more educated. They don't seem to work well in prisons for some reason. But basically, the idea is Ouija boards, spirit boards, angel boards, whatever you want to call them. There is an awful lot of discussion about them and whether it's the iodometer effect, whether it's you pushing the glass, whether it's subconsciously happening, whether it's fraudulently happening. And I believe all of those are possible. We all know that people can act fraudulently. And I do believe that the subconscious is very capable of trying to make you push the glass to get the answer that you want. But what we're trying to do is actually just find out if you have an answer, but you don't know the answer, whether it'll give you the answer. And the way we've come about this is by using the Zener cards. We have 2 packs. So on the board, we will have one. There's 5 main types of card. So we have one of each down one side of the board. And then we take the same cards, the same shapes. And it's very important that you don't look, that nobody else can see what you're doing. And you shuffle the cards randomly behind your back, or you get somebody else to do it. And then you choose a card, but obviously you can't see. So this is all random. You hold the card up behind your back again, so that nobody else can see. There's no reflections in mirrors. And you basically ask the spirits if they can match the card that you're holding by taking the glass on the board and matching it to the card on the board.
Oh, shut the front door.
And when it works, it doesn't work all the time, but when it works, it is bloody incredible.
Yeah, now that would freak me out.
Yeah. And I've got friends of mine who are massive skeptics. They've done it. They've done similar experiments, but with picture cards instead, or you can do it with playing cards, as long as you've got the same cards. And when they've had it happen to them and they just can't explain it. And we do it in groups of 5, mainly because it makes the maths easy when you're working out the percentages. And our hit rate is round about 30%, which is, in paranormal speaking, is quite high.
Yeah, that's hard to explain that.
Yeah. And it's fascinating. And you just, I mean, obviously you need to check that there's some activity first of all. And usually how I'll start it is if we go to a location where we're going to do it, I'll speak out to the spirits before we even start, and I say, we're going to play a game or an experiment, depending on where you are, you know, who you're trying to or what you're trying to encourage to help you, and you explain it to them, and then hope that when you bring the board, because I'm not one that's going to sit, we don't sit there and go, oh, is there anybody there or anything like that. It's purely used for this kind of experiment. And we've had some fascinating results with it.
What's really interesting is how you said in locations that is less probable of intelligence that is not there compared to other locations like prisons, right? So if we look at statistics, most people that are in prison does not have a high IQ or high level intelligence, right? So that makes sense. So it's very
or a
interesting.
high level of patience.
That is correct, and that makes sense. So that for you to conclude that from doing this, that is fantastic observations.
Yeah, we found it works better in libraries, in places of learning. We've done courthouses before, and we get some kind of response there. Our local town hall is where we've had the best response, and that's because it's been an ongoing project for many years. We've been going in there for many years, almost, you know, on a monthly basis, and we were able then to not so much get a rapport, but I think there was a level of trust with whatever was there and with us, if that makes sense. So that was where we had our best responses. But it was a place that was used as a hospital. It was it's been used as for various activities since the place was built in the 1800s.
Wow.
And I would love people to try it. I would love people to do it and then sort of come back to me and let me know how they get on.
There you go, Chris.
Don't expect anything on your first one. Pardon?
I don't know. I don't know if I can do that. That would literally freak me out. I mean,
I'm not a Ouija board guy myself, so.
One of the funniest ones we had was we did it in a castle. We've got a castle quite close to where I live called St. Breville's. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. I love it. I've been there nearly 40 times investigating over the years. And we did it there one evening and it kicked the cards off. We had our fingers on the glass and it literally kicked all the cards off and then spelt out the word boring. And I just found that real, like, yeah, okay, you don't want to play then.
No. Somebody knows your language when they told you was boring.
Well, it could have well been, yeah.
Right.
You mentioned in what you had sent me, have strong interest in demonology.
I do.
Explain that.
Explain that. Oh,
please.
I find the concept of demons throughout history and throughout different religions very fascinating. I think there is it's quite weird because over here we're not as into demons over here as maybe you are in the States and certainly sort of in Europe and places like that. And I find it very interesting, the concept of them, the history of them, particularly in Christianity, where, to be honest, they were, in my opinion, and as history kind of shows, they were invented by the church to control people. And there's evidence of that throughout the Crusades. So yes, I find them very interesting. And if you look back in history, into ancient history, demons were actually oracles and were a form of entity that people went to for advice and assistance. They weren't something that was looked at as evil or, you know, I can never say the word malevolent.
Yeah. So that leads me to my next question. Have you run across, in your experiences, ever run across one or thought you might have run across a demon?
Oh, the only thing that I've come across some very negative spirits. I never believed that when you see on television, excuse me, my cats have come to say hello. So if you get a tail or anything, there you go, there's a tail. I've come across, as I say, some very negative spirits. One of my team members is my daughter. And I watched scratches appear on her neck, which I was quite shocked at, and brought the investigation to an end. I still do not believe that it was demonic, and I don't believe that it is, because if you read the actual history of demons from a negative point of view, they should be able to do far more than a few scratches. There's not enough evidence there, I think, to back up the demonic behavior that maybe Hollywood likes to portray.
Yeah.
The only thing that has ever happened, which I can't explain, was when I was living at the Lock. I was trying to think how old I was, 13 or 16. It's in my book. I was woken up at night because I was having a nightmare. And when I woke up, this nightmare was still going on. And it was the most horrific sound that I have ever heard in my life. It sounded like, and it's the only way I can describe it, as if a pack of wolves were fighting. And you could hear every growl, snarl, biting, snapping, every noise, but it all seemed to be coming from one voice box. And my parents were awake. My mum was crying. And I called out to my dad, who was nothing scared. My dad, he was a real Victorian, spare the rod, spoil the child. He nothing scared him whatsoever. And I asked him what it was, and he said, I don't know. And I said, are you going to find out? And his words were, not bloody likely. And he said to me, whatever you do, don't look out of the window.
Oh, wow. And
that stuck with me. And this noise went on for about an hour, and then it just stopped. And this is on a lock side. There's no other houses around. You know, there's a total of 250 acres. So we're talking about a lot of space. There were no boats because it was September, so the season had finished. There was no animal that could make that sound there. The islands were private. Nothing could get on there. It didn't sound like anything. I mean, I love natural history and big fans of David Attenborough. I went to the library because back in those days there was no internet or anything like that, but we used to have like tapes, and you could listen to bird sounds and things like that through tape recorders and headphones. And I listened to everything that I could possibly think it was, and nothing matched this sound. And in the morning when I went out there, because I said it sounded like this pack of wolves fighting, I expected to see the grass turfed up. I expected to see scratches on the tarmac, even blood or fur, and there was nothing. There was not a blade of grass out of place. There was no scratches on the pathway, nothing. And my dad, who had spent all my life saying there's no such things as ghosts, said there's more between heaven and hell than we'll ever know. Whether that was demonic. What do you class as a demon? To me, I would go more with what we class as elementals, which is like an earthborn entity that's, some would say they're there to protect the water or the trees or things like that. I don't know, but I know that it was nothing that should have been on this planet.
Wow.
And it terrified us. And for my dad to be too scared to go and look, you know, we used to get party steamers coming up, and you'd get people on there, you know, lads, groups of lads that had far too much to drink and were causing chaos. My dad would just walk down there, and he had a big lump of wood, because you could do that in those days, and he just knocked their legs out from under them. And then he'd have called the police, and the police came and picked them up and took them out. You know, I saw him take on 6, 7 lads, and this is a guy that was in his 50s. Nothing scared my dad, but that night he was too scared to go out and see what was out there.
Wow.
And yeah, that's the only thing I could ever say that has come close to following that line. But I don't know. I do think that a lot of spirits will pretend to be demons because they know that that's what scares us.
Right.
And especially if you have spirits that either have had some kind of religious background, or my personal belief is what you're like in life is what you're going to be like in death. So if you're a mean, nasty so-and-so in life, you're not going to be very pleasant in death. If you've got a sick sense of humor in life, you're going to take that with you. And I intend to haunt people in the most horrendous of ways when I go. And I'm sure that there are many spirits that think, yeah, we can have you. You think you've come to investigate us, but we'll get rid of you. And,
right.
You know, it's spirits will lie. Because they can, in my opinion. Why not? You've got the whole of eternity. You've got to do something to keep yourself entertained.
Yeah.
And I think that is a lot of the problems, is because there's been so much talk over the last few years about demons. It's almost like ghosts and spirits are no longer scary enough. We need something else. We need something more to scare people. Especially sort of from the entertainment point of view. And I think, you know, this talk is heard. I think it's heard in the ether just as much as we hear it on a, you know, as we're talking now. And I mean, I must be honest, if I was a spirit and knew that someone was scared by demons, I'd be on that like a shot. I'd be doing whatever I could to scare the bejeebers out of them.
Yeah. Rachel, how does everybody find you and follow you and so forth?
I'm on Facebook. So Rachel Hayward. So you can find me on Facebook. I've got what have I got? I've also got the rope page as well. You can find researchers of paranormal events. And there's also myself, which is as a paranormal investigator consultant.
Awesome.
And don't forget, she has a book out called The Lighthouse
And I have a book
Haunted
out. Yeah.
on
And
Amazon.
there's I think in the book, hold on, I think, yeah, my email address is also in the book as well. So if anybody wants to contact me that way, they're more than welcome.
I'm definitely not going out with you on a ghost hunt.
Oh no, come over, we'll have a ball.
Yeah.
We'll have a ball.
But thank you so much. It's been an honor. I know it's like 1:02 a.m. So I greatly appreciate your time and everything. And you're more welcome to come back anytime. So yeah.
Love to.
Thank you.
Have to listen out, because I'm also very interested in cryptoids and things like that.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Like to
from
hear
coast
some
to
more of that.
coast.
That would be good.
Yeah. from
Guys,
coast
it's
to
been an
coast.
absolute pleasure. Thank you very, very much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Good night. Take care. Thank you.